Nobody told you this was coming, and that is the part that stays with you longest. That you were already inside the most important moment before you even knew it had started. It is 2 a.m., and you are sitting on the edge of your bed, not crying, not thinking clearly, just existing in that heavy fog that depression wraps around you when nobody else is watching and nobody else knows. You did not call your dog. You did not make a sound. You did not move from that spot. But somehow, they are already there, pressing their warm weight against your leg like they have been waiting for exactly this moment all evening. You probably told yourself it was coincidence, that they just happened to wander in, that dogs do this kind of thing randomly. And you probably smiled a little and scratched their ear and said nothing out loud about what you were actually feeling. It sounds reasonable. A dog wanders into a room, finds they're human, stays close. That is just what dogs do. Except there is a serious problem with that explanation, and that problem is the entire reason this video exists tonight. Your dog was not wandering. Your dog was not being random. Your dog had already detected something in the air around you, a specific invisible chemical signal that your body had been silently broadcasting for hours before you even sat down on that bed. Researchers have now confirmed, in peer-reviewed laboratories with controlled conditions and measurable results, that dogs can smell the exact chemical difference between a human who is fine and a human who is quietly falling apart on the inside. That moment at 2 a.m. was not your dog being sweet. It was your dog reading a biological signal you did not even know your own body was sending and responding to it with the only tool they have ever needed, which is their presence. Stay with me, because this is not just science. This is the story of what your dog actually knew about you in the moments when you thought you were completely alone and completely invisible to everything around you. In 2022, inside a behavioral psychology laboratory at Queen's University, Belfast, a PhD researcher named Clara Wilson set up one of the most quietly revolutionary experiments in the entire history of canine science. She recruited 4 dogs, Trio, Fingal, Soot, and Winnie, and 36 human volunteers, and she asked herself a question that sounds almost too simple to be science. Can a dog tell the difference, by smell alone, between a person who is stressed and a person who is not? The setup was precise. Volunteers were asked to solve a difficult maths problem while researchers measured their blood pressure and heart rate and collected samples of their sweat and their breath, taken before and after the task with careful documentation of every variable. The dogs were then trained to search a scent lineup, multiple samples laid out in a row in front of them, and alert researchers to the correct one using only their nose, with absolutely no visual or audio cues from any human in the room. Here is where the experiment becomes extraordinary. In every single test session, each person's relaxed sample and stressed sample were collected just 4 minutes apart from the same human body in the same room on the same day. 4 minutes apart, the same person, the same room. The only variable was what their nervous system was doing inside those 4 minutes, and every single dog correctly identified which sample was the stressed one, every single time without exception. The accuracy rate was not close, and it was not filled with room for doubt. The dogs were correct in discriminating stressed samples from baseline samples with a statistical reliability that genuinely stunned the researchers who had designed the study themselves. Clara Wilson wrote in her published findings, "The research highlights that dogs do not need visual or audio cues to pick up on human stress. This is the first study to provide evidence that dogs can smell stress from breath and sweat alone." What that sentence means in plain language is this: your dog does not need to see you cry, does not need to hear your voice break, does not need any external signal whatsoever. Your body chemistry alone tells them everything they will ever need to know about where you are emotionally. That feeling you always had, that your dog somehow knew, that they always seemed to find you on the days when you needed them most, that was not imagination. That was not projection. That was chemistry. And now it has a laboratory confirmation that cannot be argued with. The scientific name for what the dogs were detecting is volatile organic compounds, VOCs, microscopic chemical molecules that every human body releases through breath and skin during emotional and physiological stress responses that happen completely beneath our conscious awareness. Your body produces a completely different, invisible chemical signature when your cortisol spikes and your adrenaline rises, and your nervous system shifts into a stressed state. And a dog's nose, with its 300 million scent receptors compared to your 6 million, reads that signature the way you read a sentence. But Queen's University Belfast was only the beginning of this story. Because in 2024, a research team at Dalhousie University in Canada went one layer deeper, into territory that made the original study look like the first chapter of a much longer and far more personal book. Researcher Laura Quiroga at Dalhousie University, working alongside Dr. Simon Gadbois from the university's dedicated canine olfaction lab, published a study in Frontiers in Allergy in 2024 that pushed the question further than any scientist had gone before. She and her team were not just asking if dogs could smell stress. They were asking if dogs could smell the specific chemical fingerprint of trauma, of PTSD, of the kind of psychological weight that does not show on your face and does not exist in your voice and has no visible signal for anyone around you to read. They recruited 26 people who had experienced significant trauma. Over half of them met the full clinical criteria for post-traumatic stress disorder, and had them wear special face masks while being asked to recall their most painful and difficult memories in a controlled setting. 2 dogs, Ivy, a red golden retriever, and Callie, a German shepherd, were trained to identify the breath samples from those traumatic recall sessions, working across 40 different sample sets collected throughout the entire duration of the study. Ivy achieved 74% accuracy, and Callie achieved 81% accuracy. Both dogs were correctly identifying the presence of trauma-related chemical changes in human breath, changes so subtle that no existing technology we currently have can reliably detect them. But the finding that stopped the researchers mid-sentence was this. Ivy and Callie appeared to be detecting different stress hormones from each other, responding to different chemical pathways, as if each dog had individually developed her own specialized biological sensitivity to human suffering. Quiroga wrote that although both dogs performed at very high accuracy, they seemed to have a slightly different idea of what they considered a stressed breath sample, which means individual dogs may develop unique chemical signatures specifically for reading their particular human's emotional state. Your dog may be attuned to your specific chemistry in ways that no other dog on earth is, calibrated to you personally, reading your cortisol and adrenaline patterns the way a musician reads a score they have memorized so completely it lives in their body. Now here is where the story gets deeper, because this is not an accident of biology and not a useful coincidence. This is the direct product of 15,000 years of coevolution between 2 species that made a decision to survive together before either of them fully understood what they were agreeing to. Before dogs were dogs, they were wolves, operating on cold survival logic, pack hierarchy, threat assessment, resource competition. Emotion in that world was a liability and not an asset. And warmth was not a strategy that kept you alive through winter. But somewhere between 10 and 15,000 years ago, something began to shift. Certain wolves started spending more time near human settlements, and the ones who could read human emotional states, who could anticipate human behavior, who could detect when a human was calm versus when they were afraid, those wolves survived better and left more offspring. Generation after generation, across thousands of breeding cycles, the ability to read human chemistry was not just tolerated, it was selected for, amplified, refined, passed forward until what exists today is not simply an animal that lives alongside humans, but a species that is biologically constructed to monitor them. In 2015, researcher Miho Nagasawa at Azabu University in Japan published a landmark study in the journal Science that found something that changed how biologists understood the human-dog relationship at its most fundamental level. When a dog and their human make eye contact, both species release oxytocin, the same bonding hormone that activates between a mother and her newborn child in the first moments after birth. The hormone that is responsible for attachment, for trust, for the feeling of being safe with another living being. This is called the oxytocin gaze positive loop. Your dog looks at you, your oxytocin rises, you look back, their oxytocin rises, which makes you look at them more, which elevates both of your hormone levels further in an ascending spiral of biological bonding that reinforces itself every single time it happens. No other animal on Earth has developed this loop with humans. Not cats, not horses, not primates who share 98% of our DNA. Only dogs. Because only dogs spent 15,000 years being specifically selected for the ability to connect with the human nervous system at a chemical and hormonal level. Here is what nobody tells you. This biological monitoring system that your dog runs silently on your behalf every single day has a warning signal of its own, and most owners miss it completely because they do not know what they are actually looking at when they see it. When your dog starts sitting closer than usual without being invited, when they follow you from room to room more persistently than they normally do, when they position themselves specifically against your body rather than just nearby in the same general space, that is not clinginess. That is an alert. When your dog nudges your hand repeatedly, even when you have not stopped petting them, presses their head into your chest with real intention, or stares at your face with an intensity that makes you feel slightly seen in a way you cannot explain, that is your dog detecting an elevated VOC signature and responding to it with proximity behavior. Service dogs trained specifically for psychiatric assistance work are taught to do exactly what your untrained dog may already be doing entirely by instinct. Interrupting a depressive or anxious episode by pressing physical weight against the person's body, because deep pressure stimulation measurably reduces cortisol levels in the human nervous system. If your dog leans into you when you are overwhelmed, not gently but firmly, putting real deliberate weight against you, that is not accidental comfort, and it is not random affection. That is your dog performing a physiological intervention using their body as the only instrument they have available to them. But here is the checklist you actually need. Because there is an important difference between your dog monitoring your emotional state and your dog showing signs of emotional distress themselves. And confusing the two means missing something that matters for both of you. If your dog is staying close to you but still eating normally, still engaging when you offer play, still making eye contact with a soft and relaxed expression, that is monitoring behavior. That is them doing exactly what they are biologically built to do, and it means they are reading something elevated in your chemistry right now. If your dog is staying close to you and has also stopped eating, stopped responding to things they normally love, stopped making normal eye contact, seems flattened and low in their energy even when you are present and talking to them, that is emotional contagion. That is your dog absorbing your stress directly into their own nervous system. A 2024 study published in Nature found that the smell of human stress affected dogs' own emotional states and caused them to make more pessimistic behavioral choices in tasks, which means if you are carrying chronic depression or sustained anxiety, your dog may be carrying a version of that weight right alongside you without either of you realizing it. This is not said to add guilt to something you are already struggling with. It is said because your dog's behavioral change may be the most honest signal available to you that your own system needs support, and they cannot tell you in words, so they tell you in the only language they have, which is their body and their behavior. You have been each other's most honest mirrors all along. Your dog reflects your chemistry back to you in a language that bypasses every single defense mechanism and every story you have ever told yourself about how you are doing fine. Go back to that bedroom for a moment. 2 a.m., the heavy silence. You sitting completely still and not calling anyone, not making a sound, not signaling in any direction that you needed company or comfort or another living presence in the room. And your dog came anyway, because you had already been broadcasting a chemical signal they could read from another room, through a closed door, through the ordinary nighttime smell of a house where nothing appeared to be wrong. Your body had been speaking in a language only they were built to hear. That is not a small thing, and it is not a coincidence, and it is not a sweet moment you misremember as more meaningful than it was. That was your dog doing what 15,000 years of evolution built them specifically to do, which is to find you when you need finding, even when you do not know you need it yourself. Think about every single time your dog appeared when you did not call them. Every time they pressed against you for no reason you could see. Every time they watched your face with that particular quality of stillness. Every time they simply refused to leave the room you were sitting in alone. Every one of those moments was a detection event, your dog reading your invisible chemistry, processing it through a nose that carries 300 million receptor cells dedicated to exactly this kind of work, and answering with the only response they have ever needed. I am here. The science does not make this less emotional. It makes it more. Because now you understand that your dog was not performing comfort, was not following a habit, was not bored or hungry or looking for something from you. They were responding to a biological call from your body that you did not even know you had made. And here is the part that matters most. They responded every single time, without being asked, without needing an explanation, without requiring you to justify or minimize or make sense of what you were feeling. They just came, and they stayed. And that is the whole story. Dr. Simon Gadbois at Dalhousie, who has spent his entire career inside the canine olfaction laboratory, has said that we are only at the beginning of understanding what dogs can detect in human chemistry. Current research covers stress and trauma and fear, but the frontier ahead extends toward early disease detection, mental health monitoring, and forms of emotional reading that we do not yet have the scientific language to describe. What exists right now, confirmed in peer-reviewed science published in PLOS One and Frontiers in Allergy and the journal Science, is this. Your dog can smell your emotional state. Your dog's own nervous system responds to your chemistry. And your dog has been shaped by 15,000 years of evolution to do exactly what they do when they find you alone at 2 a.m. without being called. Your dog is not just a companion. They are the product of a 15,000-year evolutionary commitment between two species that decided, before either of them fully understood what they were choosing, to pay attention to each other and to keep paying attention no matter what. You are the reason your dog is the animal they are. Not your specific dog, but the entire species. Every dog that has ever lived was shaped by the fact that humans were worth reading, and worth tracking, and worth developing an entire biological monitoring system to stay close to. That is the highest evolutionary compliment one species has ever paid to another. 15,000 years of your ancestors being worth paying attention to, encoded now in the nose and the nervous system of the animal sleeping on your floor tonight. You are allowed to feel the full weight of that the next time your dog finds you when you did not call them, the next time they press against you for no visible reason, the next time they watch your face with that specific, quiet attention that feels like being truly seen. You are allowed to know exactly what that is and what it means. That is not just love. That is the most sophisticated biological monitoring system on Earth, running quietly and continuously on your behalf every single day. Because 15,000 years of evolution decided that you were worth protecting. Has your dog ever found you on your worst day without being called? Sat with you at 2 a.m. without any explanation? Pressed against you in exactly the moment you needed it most? I want to know what happened. Tell me in the comments below, and I read every single one without exception. Did you feel this tonight? Did something in this video confirm something you already knew somewhere in your chest, but could never quite explain to anyone else around you? If it did, drop a comment below. Tell me you felt this, even if it is just 2 words. And if you want to add something I missed, a moment with your dog that fits this science perfectly, something that nobody talks about but that every dog owner has experienced, write it below, because this community learns from each other and your story might be exactly what someone else needs to read tonight. If you believe that dogs deserve to be understood at this level, that the science of what they feel and what they know should be taken as seriously as any other science, share this video with someone who has a dog, because they need to see this tonight. My name is Dog Mind. I make these videos because dogs are not just animals that live in our homes. They are the most extraordinary relationship most of us will ever have in our entire lives, and that deserves to be understood, not just felt. Next time we go deeper into what dogs actually experience when their owner dies, and what the science says happens inside a dog's brain and body in the weeks after that kind of profound loss. Because the answer is not what most people expect, and it will completely change how you see every ordinary day you still have left together. Tell me their name, just their name, right there in the comments below. Nothing else needed. That is enough. That will always be enough.